everyone, I am Ankita. Welcome back to my channel Tejasvi Insaan, and today I am with the ninth episode of the Bible Storytime series, The Moses and the Plague. Let's begin. On his throne in Egypt, the Pharaoh was in hysterics. Do you hear that? He asked his advisor between fits of laughter. He pointed to the pair of scruffy men who had so rudely demanded an audience before his court. Let the Israelites go free, they said. Can you believe it? Some of the Pharaoh's advisers shook their heads, while others chuckled along with him. The Israelites were the Egyptian slaves. They were excellent workers, so the very idea of giving them their freedom was more than funny for them. It was ridiculous, rather. Well, the Pharaoh snorted, trying to keep a straight face. Who are you to demand anything of the Pharaoh? I am Aaron, said the first of the men, and this is my brother Moses, messenger of God. At the mention of his name, a chorus of muttering filled the room. Moses shrank back, clutching his staff so hard that his knuckles turned white. The Pharaoh was intrigued. Moses, he said, sitting up in his throne, the impostor? He had not been Pharaoh when Moses was a boy. But he knew all about the Israelite who for a time had lived in the palace as an Egyptian prince. What foolishness is this? Moses hasn't been seen in years. He's dead or else gone. Now Moses had achieved much since the burning bush had told him to return to Egypt. He had been reunited when his brother Aaron had convinced the Israelites that the God on his side, he would lead them to freedom. All he had to do now was keep that promise. Moses cleared his throat. I am Moses, he declared, and on behalf of God, I demand that you let my people go. This time the whole court burst into laughter. Dead man, impostor, messenger for the Hebrew God. Whoever this man was, he was quite cleverly crazy. Moses fell quiet, but Aaron had not finished. He snatched the staff off Moses' hand and hurled it on the floor with a clatter. It lay there for a while, unmoving. Then, to the amazement of the court, hard wood bent and withered, transformed into soft, scaly flesh. Sharp fangs erupted from one end and where a staff had been. Now slithered a great serpent. The Pharaoh was unimpressed. Is the best your God can do? With a waft of his hand, two cloaked figures emerged from the shadows, each carrying a staff. My magicians can do so much better. The magicians threw their staff on the floor. There was a flash of light, and they too became serpents. But just as quickly as they were made, Moses' staff swallowed each serpent whole. Tricks, nothing but tricks. The Pharaoh growled, all traces of laughter gone. Your God has no real power, and I will not free your people. Now leave my side. And he called for his guards to drag them out. But the next morning, when the Pharaoh was lounging on his royal barge, Moses and Aaron appeared on the nearby shore. Pharaoh, announced Aaron, I speak for Moses and for God when I say to you, let my people go. The Pharaoh sighed, and what will you do if I refuse? More games with sticks and snakes? Rather than reply, Aaron waded out into the river until the water came up to his knees. He raised his staff high over his head, then plunged it firmly into the water. At first, nothing happened. All those bored, the birds giggled and guffawed. But then soon fell silent. When moments later the water around Aaron grew dark and murky. In an instant the darkness spread and the entire river turned to blood. Just another trick, declared the Pharaoh. He snapped his fingers and his magicians appeared beside him. Show them how it's done. The magicians brought out a bowl of clean water. They waved their hand over it, made click clackering noises with their tongues, and that water too turned blood red. See, your God has no real power, shouted the Pharaoh triumphantly. I am Pharaoh, I do not fear your God, and I will not let your people go. Sail on. For many weeks, Moses and Aaron continued to pursue the Pharaoh, demanding to free the Israelites. And now, each time the Pharaoh refuses, a terrible plague was unleashed upon Egypt. First came a plague of frogs that swarmed through the streets. They hopped into houses, bathed in drinking water, and cached people around the city. The Pharaoh's magicians were powerless. They could make more frogs, but they cannot get rid of them. Eventually, the constant croaking became too much for the Pharaoh. Fine, he agreed. Rid me out of these pests. Then you can take your people and go. But when the frogs were gone, the Pharaoh broke his promise with a smile. The frogs have left. I see no reason to give us the Israelites. So God sent lice and then biting flies to make life uncomfortable and itchy for the Egyptians and their animals. Again, the magicians were unable to stop them, and again the Pharaoh promised to give in, but the moment the plague were ended, he went back on his words. Things will only get worse, warned Aaron. Your cattle will die and your skin will be covered with balls of oozing sores. Please let our people go. I will do no such thing, asked the Pharaoh. Do you worst Israelites? And they did. As threatened, the cradle of the Egyptians dropped dead where they stood, and soon after, every Egyptian man, woman, and child broke out in painful bowel sores, but the Pharaoh would not relent. Days after his sores had healed, the Pharaoh was sitting on his throne when an advisor burst in, shrieking, Fire! Fire! The sky is raining fire! The Pharaoh went out into his balcony, and sure enough, fire was raining down from the sky. A large fireball missed him by a hand's width, and when it landed, it exploded into shards of ice. What sorcery is this? Thought the Pharaoh. As if in reply, the Pharaoh heard his name being called from the courtyard below. He looked down to find Moses standing unharmed amidst the chaos. I ask you again, let my people go. The Pharaoh flinched as another fireball struck the place and another, for as far as Pharaoh could see, the sky was ablaze with fiery hail, while down below the city was burning. Take them, he shouted, above the noise of screaming advisers and exploding hail. I gave in. Just stop this madness and leave. But after the hail ended and the fires were put out, the Pharaoh would not let the Israelites go. Even when a plague of locusts devoured the crop in Egypt, or when Moses lifted his hands to the sky and stole all from the land for 3 days, the Pharaoh would not give in. I have survived your plagues, and I will continue to do so, he declared. There is nothing more you can throw at me. Please, Moses replied, what comes next is more terrible than you can imagine. I ask once more, for your sake, let my people go. No, Moses, spat the Pharaoh. I am Pharaoh, and my words is final. I will not let your people go. So be it, whispered Moses, and left the Pharaoh alone in the dark. In the days that followed, Moses and Aaron went among the Israelites, telling each household to take a lamb and sacrifice it to God, using its blood to mark the doorway on their houses. It was midnight when all the Israelites were safe inside their homes and all their doorways had been marked that God released his final plague on Egypt. A gentle breeze stirred through the streets. That was how it started. Then, like a living thing, it grew stronger, bolder. It moved from house to house, slipping through doorways and windows, but always passing over Israelite homes. The wind visited every Egyptian house, all the way to the Pharaoh's place. When it entered last of all, before fading to nothing, and with its passing, a great cry resounded through Egypt. Moses walked through the city with a heavy heart, past buildings alive with the shrieks and howls of suffering families. When he arrived at the place, he found the lights were out, and there is a shadow was a Pharaoh on his throne, his eldest son dead in his arms. Hearing Moses entered the Pharaoh, his head weeping up like a viper. What have you done? He hissed. I warned you, Pharaoh. You had the chance to stop this. You could have let my people go. You could have believed in the power of my God. Now he has taken the lives of all Egyptian firstborn children, including your son. The Pharaoh glowered at Moses, his eyes full of hatred. He opened his mouth, and for a second Moses was sure he would shout or yell or curse his name. Instead, the Pharaoh's eyes returned to his son. Take them, he whispered. Take your people and get out. And he said nothing more. Moses hastened to tell the Israelites of the Pharaoh's decision, urging them to pack fast and leave. With God on their side, the Israelites had been given their freedom, but all knew how quickly a Pharaoh could change his mind. That is it for today's video. Hope you all liked it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.